Fallout, the legendary franchise with a history of almost 30 years that managed to become a sort of flagship in the realm of post-apocalyptic science fiction. The original design, the meticulous crafting of the 1950s post-nuclear futuristic America setting, and the romanticization of the apocalypse theme, despite all the brutality involved, have won the hearts of many players from different generations, including mine. The epic storytelling scale and the geography of unfolding events have provided an infinite possibility for writing diverse stories, continuously revealing this amazing world and piecing together a unified historical narrative. And it is this narrative I would like to share with you. Cut to bio, my name is Mo Fisher and welcome to the Lost Holotapes channel. Here I won't be given surface-level reviews of individual games, comparing them to each other, describing specific aspects of the setting or gameplay, or showcasing the quirks of Fallout 76. All of that is already abundantly available on the vast expanses of the internet. I would like to delve into the historical events of this artistic world, paying special attention to its settlements and factions. Currently, the Fallout history spans 210 post-apocalyptic years. There are many games, many locations, numerous hidden holotapes, multiple endings for each individual game, plenty of fan mods, enormous amount of candles on ghouls' birthday cakes, and there is no consistent timeline with each new release in this series. Therefore, when playing Fallout, you can have a fairly good understanding of the events in the context of a specific installment, but you may miss the bigger picture, the outside relations, and how certain events affect the global history. It's important to clarify right away that this narrative will be a mixture of canon, semi-canon, branching storylines dependent on the player's choices, fan-made story mods, and my own assumptions and slight adjustments in order to create a more complex, logical, and interesting story. I consider dividing the lore strictly into canon and non-canon to be the utmost snobbery. In reality, lore is a pyramid where canon sits at the top of the hierarchy, of course, but beneath it there are plenty of other lore sources with varying degrees of prioritization, transforming a bland soup into a flavorful broth. In terms of the quality of content produced, the immense fan community has shown that it's capable of bringing as much to the Fallout world as the official publisher does, and fan-made mods like New California, Frontier, Miami, and London are eagerly awaited, much like Fallout New Vegas 2. So essentially, this is my own but most accurate, as I believe, interpretation of everything that happens in Fallout, which strives to encompass maximum lore with minimum conflicts and plot holes. After all, even the canonical version of the Fallout world is rich in narrative and logical conflicts. And let's admit it, you're interested in hearing the history of the New Reno civil wars before the events of Fallout 2, or experiencing the process of the Viper's degradation from a tribe that couldn't defeat the Brotherhood of Steel for 10 years to erect a group culturally close to the Finns. The point is, these pieces of stories are given in the fan-made content. Well, I suppose that's enough for the introductory explanation, let's begin our journey. When discussing the history of the Fallout world, it is important to keep in mind what happened before the Great War, the so-called culmination of the military conflict between China and the USA on October 23rd of 2077, during which the world was devastated by nuclear warheads. There had been a significant tension in the air due to the ongoing Cold Wars, which escalated into hot conflicts in the early 2050s. They led to what became known as the Resource Wars. The USA, China, the Soviet Union, the European Commonwealth, and other states with substantial nuclear capabilities fought fiercely over resources. According to Fallout Sonora, in 2051, the USA annexed Mexico, which also became a vast industrial zone, including for military purposes. As a result, Mexican cities became equally significant targets during the impending nuclear war. According to Fallout New California, Japan was taken over by China. That explains the presence of Japanese sailors on a submarine that found itself in San Francisco Bay in 2077, and also the presence of Yakuza gang in Fallout 2. In April 2053, the USA launched a military campaign in Spain, with the climax being the Battle of Madrid. During this battle, the Spanish detonated the city, resulting in the death of over 10,000 American soldiers and around 50,000 civilians. A joint US and UK offensive in the USSR also failed. While they managed to seize Moscow, the retreating Russians launched a counterattack and pushed the Americans out of the city when they were abandoned by British forces. In December 2053, militants who had acquired a nuclear warhead destroyed the city of Tel Aviv. Additionally, in the 2050s, various bioweapons were being developed in US military laboratories. For instance, the Limit 115 virus was being developed at the Hoover Dam as a population sterilizer, intended for use against China. However, Chinese spies managed to steal intermediate virus samples in 2053 and unleashed an epidemic known as the Blue Flu or New Plague in Denver. The highly contagious and lethal infection spread rapidly, leading the government to impose mass isolation measures and close borders. Corporations like Vestec were tasked with developing a vaccine, but they never succeeded. By 2060, the world faced an oil crisis. Oil had run out. The European Union dissolved, the Middle East was depleted, and the USA ceased selling its oil to other countries. China, with no active oil reserves of its own, resorted to invading Alaska and capturing oil wells out of desperation. The war between China and the USA on Alaskan soil was known as the Sino-American War and was part of the global resource wars. During the course of the war, the USA annexed Canada in 2072. In early 2077, in the Battle of Anchorage, the USA managed to rid themselves of the invaders and shifted the front line from North America to China. Over more than a decade of war, both countries completely devastated their economies and political structures. On October 23, 2077, the culmination of the conflict occurred. Nuclear missiles were launched. History doesn't specify who pressed the button first, but given the situation's context, it is likely that China initiated it. Nevertheless, all nations with nuclear warheads participated, and the ensuing Great War, which began and ended almost immediately, annihilated the world. Society collapsed, states disappeared, cities turned to ruins, and the land became wild, radioactive wastelands inhabited by mutants. Today we will begin to study the history of one such wasteland, New California. New California/Core Region, the birthplace of the Fallout world and the main setting for the first and second installments of the series. However, it is often mentioned in other games as well, for example in Fallout New California or Fallout New Vegas, as the events unfolding in the sunny state significantly impact the rest of the world. The wasteland itself stretches from southern Oregon to the Mexican border, covering the area of a pre-war state. To the north, through the yet unexplored central part of Oregon, lies the frontier wasteland. To the east, there are the wastelands of Nevada and Mojave along the Sierra Nevada mountain range. To the south and east, there is Sonora Wasteland along the Salton Sea and the Colorado River. Currently, New California is the most extensive wasteland in the Fallout world, largely due to the vast geographic scale of the early franchise installments. The wasteland can be roughly divided into subregions, each distinguished by its geography, natural biomes and local events. So we have Klamath Mountains, North Coast, Great California Valley, Sierra Nevada West, Central Coast, Mojave Desert, Death Valley, the Boneyards, San Bernardino, Cajon Pass, the Glow and the Dune Sea. At least for now. Today we will start discussing the history of New California from 2077 to 2162, including the events of Fallout 1, while also touching upon the exposition revealed in Fallout 2 and Fallout New California. We will not delve into the history of the subregions of San Bernardino and Cajon Pass in this particular video, as we will cover them in a separate episode dedicated to Fallout New California to avoid confusion. Alright, let's begin our exploration of the history with the vaults. In brief, vaults are special underground bunkers built by the pre-war corporation Vault-Tec in anticipation of nuclear war, designed to save at least some portion of the civilian population. Typically, they were intended for long-term autonomous existence, employing technologies for food replication, water purification, and other life support systems for the residents. Most vaults were also equipped with a special briefcase called the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, which could revitalize radiation-soaked soil and create favorable conditions for surface life when the vault dwellers eventually leave their shelters. I'm not sure how it works in theory, but I assume you simply plant it in the ground and then trees, grass, garden beds, fences and huts with TV antennas start to grow around it. However, the vaults had a catch. In reality, each of them was a platform for experiments conducted on their inhabitants, ranging from psychological and social studies to experiments involving mutations, various substances, and inhuman living conditions. Most of the experiments became the reasons for the vaults perishing. Here in New California, we have the demonstration vault that was built in Rancho Palos Verdes. It didn't have a numerical designation. Vault 5 is mentioned in Fallout New California. As part of the experiment, its residents, consisting of counterculture members and criminals, were forced to listen to a radio show playing heavy music 24/7. It was located in Huntington Beach. Vault 12 is located in the city of Bakersfield. At the end of the evacuation, its doors were supposed to malfunction, leaving them partially open and allowing radiation to leak inside. Vault 13 is a control vault situated beneath Mount Whitney, intended to remain sealed for 200 years. Vault 14 is located in the Sierra Nevada mountains and has a fake gear door, whatever that means. Vault 15 contained 4 different ethnic groups within, with the aim of studying their relationships. Vault 17's experiment is unknown. However, Fallout New California introduces a specific location for the vault, Baldy Mountain, on the border between the South California and San Bernardino subregions. During the war, people sought refuge in the vaults. Beside the main Vault-Tec vaults, individuals also sought safety in their own shelters and improvised hideouts. The upper echelon of the pre-war secretive organization, known as the Enclave, which held significant influence within the US government, evacuated to a secret base, the Poseidon oil platform in the Pacific Ocean, which they renamed into Control Station Enclave. There they began to rebuild the organization and create a new society. Being a pro-war Grey Cardinal and having minimal exposure to radiation and other post-apocalyptic risks, the Enclave developed an ideology based on xenophobia towards the Wasteland dwellers. They believed themselves to be the only true humans tasked with restoring the Great America, viewing the people living in the Wasteland no different from ghouls or mutants. The faction is entirely militarized, ideologically driven, and possesses significant military technological capabilities. In addition to the California branch, there was also a separate surviving branch of the Enclave in the Appalachian region, although there is no communication between the two divisions. The California Enclave will live in isolation on the platform for many decades to come. A group of military personnel took refuge from the nuclear winter at the pre-war military base called Mariposa. Mariposa Base was a pre-war city facility that researched what would eventually become the main post-nuclear scourge of the Wasteland, the first evolutionary virus, FEV. Depicted as a green liquid, it was meant to transform humans into super soldiers, both physically and intellectually, following the vein of classic science fiction. Its prototype was the Pan-Immunity Variant project, developed at the West Tech Research Complex. It intended to be a vaccine against the new plague by straightening the immune system, including the ability to withstand potential future Chinese bioweapons. However, its military potential was recognized. The possibility of using it to create their own super soldiers was discovered. In 2076, the research was classified and transferred from West Tech to Mariposa. The radiation that spread as a result of the bombings had a mutagenic effect on the virus. Creatures exposed to its influence were transforming into huge, green, aggressive, sterile, and intellectually disadvantaged supermutants. The leaked FEV virus became not only a serious problem for post-nuclear America, but also a desirable bioweapon, leading to numerous conflicts in the post-apocalyptic world. A group of soldiers guarding the Mariposa base learned of the unhuman experiments and staged a rebellion that ended with the colonel's suicide and the execution of all the scientist staff by the order of Roger Maxson, the captain who became the leader of the Army Rebellion in mid-October 2077. After the official announcement of the rebellion and the lack of a response from the government, Roger ordered the subordinates to evacuate their families to the base 2 days before the start of the war. Despite the military hysteria, the US intelligence missed a Chinese nuclear submarine, Shihuan-T, parked right in the San Francisco Bay. The submarine itself apparently did not participate in the war. The city of San Francisco also survived. A nuclear war occurred. Now let's move on to the region's history prior to events of Fallout 1. On October 27th, a group of surviving soldiers with their families left Mariposa and arrived at the Lost Hills military bunker by November. The bunker was intended to be a shelter for the US government, but no one was able to evacuate to the bunker before the war. The group of survivors, led by Roger Maxson, establishes a militaristic organization called the Brotherhood of Steel, whose initial goal was to aid people in the Wasteland and protect them from raiders, mutants, and other dangers. Their techno-religious ideology developed later. The organization is headed by an elder, although there is also an equivalent of a round table called the Elder Council. The main classes within the Brotherhood were the researchers, scientists and archivists, known as scribes, and the military personnel, including knights and paladins. Soon after the nuclear winter, a trading settlement called Junktown is founded from scrap metal and various junk salvaged from dumps. 3 years after bombing, the crew members of the submarine Shihuan-Ti established the technocratic faction Shi, settling in the area known as Chinatown, and representing one of the many social cells in post-nuclear San Francisco. Following the Eastern hierarchical tradition, the Shi introduced the title of Emperor and awarded to their supercomputer, which they retrieved from the submarine. First the machines took away our jobs, and then they started to rule over us. Formally, the Emperor had an advisor who de facto was the Emperor, but nevertheless. The Shi faction itself would stay away from political activities and focus on the development of various technologies for the next century and half. In addition to hierarchy, this faction embodies other elements of Eastern culture, including philosophy, architecture, language, traditions, military formations, and so on. Among the sailors were Japanese individuals who formed their own clan within the Shi, Nanjima. For generations, they preserved their traditions and even their language, adamantly refusing to adopt English, and surrounded themselves with artifacts reflecting traditional Japanese culture, including samurai swords, armor, household items, etc. Roger Maxson had maintained contact with his comrade in arms, Elizabeth Taggarty, who organized her militarized unit in the wasteland of Appalachia in West Virginia. He had been urging her to become part of his brotherhood, and she eventually agreed. Her faction, Taggarty's Thunder, completed its transformation into the Brotherhood of Steel Appalachia by June 20 of 2082, adopting the identity, insignia, hierarchy and goals of the parent organization. The same year, the unfortunate residents of Val 12 were exposed to radiation due to the malfunctioning door and became ghouls, all in the name of science, of course. A year later, during the summer, they, along with former residents of Bakersfield, turned ghouls, left the vault and founded the settlement of Necropolis on its ruins. The overseer of the vault became the city's first mayor. Another year later, in spring of 2084, in Necropolis, a ghoul named Set overthrows the first overseer of all 12 and banishes him from the city. 2086, after the Battle of the Brotherhood's Appalachian branch against the Supermutants in the town of Huntersville, Maxson delivers an impassioned speech stating that the Brotherhood of Steel is changing its policy, and now their main objective is not to aid people in the Wasteland but to search for, recover and protect pre-war technology. By focusing on collecting pre-war technology, the organization has managed to increase its military and research potential. To this, the organization of relatively small number of members has become one of the most influential in the post-nuclear America. In the future, they will attempt to create subsidiary branches and organize expeditions to other regions. In 2092, the residents of Demonstration Vault left their abode and established the city of Aditum in the ruins of Long Beach. Aditum, along with a handful of other small formations within the metropolitan ruins, forms an agglomeration known as the Boneyard. Before 2093, after losing contact with the Appalachian branch following the satellite's fall, Roger Maxson forms and sends the first expeditionary force beyond the region, led by Paladin Layla Rahmani, to re-establish communication with Appalachia. In 2093, a man named Angus establishes the main trading city of the region, the Hub, which began as a camp around the water oasis. It was the Hub's trading institute that introduced bottle caps as a currency, and over the next 10 years, the use of bottle caps spread throughout the wastelands. In 2097, an overcrowded Vault 15 opens, and 4 ethnically diverse and mutually hostile groups leave it. 3 of them become raider tribes, the Huns, the Jackals and the Vipers, while the 4th group establishes the town of Shady Sands in 2098, using the preserved Gek. The first group, the Huns, is raised in Mongolian culture. They lead a corresponding lifestyle, raiding, burning what they can take, enslaving people and using fur and horn helmets. The Vipers are a tribe whose culture revolves around the worship of snakes and everything associated with it. They trip on snake venom, worship the mother serpent and perform monthly rituals with sacrifices, among other things. They have their own settlement called the Shrine. The members of the last group, the Jackals, have become true savages among the others. They sharpen their teeth and practice cannibalism. On May 22 of 2102, Richard Moreau, a former resident of Old City, a city that we'll talk about in another episode, joins an expedition to Mariposa organized by merchant Harold. Harold, being a successful caravan trader, wanted to uncover the origin of the mutants that were constantly attacking caravan routes. The expedition reached Mariposa on June 23rd. Attempting to explore it from the inside, they met their demise largely due to the still functioning automatic security system. Harold, affected by mutagens, survived and returned to the hub, continuing to mutate further and isolating himself from society. Richard Moreau, as well as his comrade Mark, fell into vats of FEV. Mark turns into a super mutant, while Richard becomes a yogurt with tentacles, though they both receive super intelligence. Richard becomes obsessed with the idea that mutants are the next stage of human evolution and that they need to give this virus to everyone and turn them into super mutants as well. He pompously calls himself the Master and founds a movement called Unity, almost like a political party. For the next 30 years, he and Mark conducted experiments on abducted and accidentally wandering people and animals, infecting them with the virus and turning them into mutants. In 2110, the Enclave discovers the pre-war Navarro base on the coast north of San Francisco, making it a mainland base and the main center for the production, servicing and refueling of vertebrates. In 2120, Angus appoints himself the governor of the sprawling hub. In 5 years, Hub is attacked by vipers, but manages to repel the raiders. However, the city was awaiting another shock. In December, Angus, the governor of Hub, was assassinated on the orders of unknown party. The assassination of Angus led to a great merchant war. In addition to the mayor's assassination and subsequent power struggle, the capture of an oasis by one of the city's trading houses triggered the war. 2 years later, in 2128, all the opposing sides managed to negotiate and establish peace, resulting in the formation of a council consisting of 2 representatives from major trading houses. The war brought cleansing to the city. After the war, a gang of gun runners left the city and headed to the boneyard. 2130, the whole earth is covered with snow. The great winter has come. Upon its ending, the Master, using his created army of super mutants, begins to actively attack caravans and kidnap people to increase the rate of production of new mutants. In 2134, a group of Brotherhood of Steel deserters, alien outcasts, reached the Westtech facility, which was hit directly by a warhead. The resulting crater became an incredibly radioactive zone called the Glow, well, because it glows at night. While exploring the complex inside, the alien group perishes. In 2135, the head and the founder of the Brotherhood of Steel, Roger Maxson, dies of cancer. The new leader of the Brotherhood is his son, Maxson II. In the same year, the raider gang known as the Reapers was expelled from their base, the Fortress, by the hub's gun runners. The Fortress was a pre-war weapons factory located in Whittier. The gun runners renovated the facility and, after fine-tuning the weapon and ammunition production systems, realized that they could achieve much more by selling weapons rather than raiding. The Reapers were forced to relocate to a hangar in Downey, known as Reapers Warehouse. Before 2140, a faction called the Union of Atomic Workers emerged in the vicinity of Hub. The organization shared some ideas with the Brotherhood of Steel, but had a stricter policy of isolation. Nevertheless, they represented a significant faction as they even traveled to New Reno in the Nevada Wasteland. By 2140, Reading was founded, with its gold mines being the town's core of economy. In 2140, a criminal organization known as Decker's Underground was formed in the hub, specializing in extortion, blackmail, and stuff. The organization's headquarters is the Maltese Falcon nightclub. In 2141, the Brotherhood of Steel stops accepting new members from outside and becomes entirely self-sufficient. Before 2142, the Huns drive Jackals out of the region, forcing them to go east to Arizona and Texas. In 2150, a protracted war begins between the Brotherhood of Steel and the Vipers. The reasons for the outbreak of the war are unknown, unfortunately. In 2151, in Hub, Demetri Romaro establishes the Crimson Caravan Trading Company, which quickly becomes a major player in the caravan market due to its somewhat reckless policy of taking any job regardless of risks. Over time, the company begins to open new trade routes and its representations appear in major cities. In the same year, the Master destroys the Union of Atomic Workers. In 2154, Vault 17 is seized by the Master, who transforms its inhabitants into super mutants. 2155, in one of the clashes between the Brotherhood of Steel and the Vipers, the Brotherhood's leader, Maxon II, dies from a poisoned arrow, and Rogers Maxon's grandson, John Maxon, becomes the new Elder. On the bright side, the Brotherhood establishes full-fledged trade relations with Hub, while chasing Vipers around. In the same year, the Master gets to the Demonstration Vault and turns it into his new abode and Unity headquarters. The Gunrunner startup proves successful, and by 2155 they became the largest weapon manufacturer in the region. Before 2156, a raider gang of Reapers perishes when a pack of Deathclaws comes to their hangar to settle there themselves. In 2156, with the help of former Reaper gang member named Morpheus, the Master creates a religious cult called the Children of the Cathedral to make it easier for the Unity to infiltrate settlements. To the cultists, the nuclear holocaust represents a blank sheet of paper for humanity, and the Master is their messiah and a pencil. They kidnap or convert Wasteland settlers to their faith, sponsoring the Master's experiments to create even more supermutants. One of the rituals is baptism in FIV. They build the cathedral to serve as a cover for the vault. Mariposa becomes the headquarters for the Master's supermutant army and the main site for their creation. 2157, the Master continues to hunt down Vault Dwellers, considering them the perfect material for supermutants production. In an attempt to seize Vault 12, he attacks Necropolis. Many ghouls perish in the battle before they manage to convey to the Master that they are the actual former Vault Dwellers. Necropolis leader Sad managed to negotiate peace, but under vassal conditions. The supermutants establish a camp, Necropolis watershed, in the city to monitor traveling humans, abduct them, and ensure the cooperation of the ghouls. By 2159, the Brotherhood managed to turn the tide of the war against the Vipers, significantly reducing their presence in the region. The Vipers have to lie low for a long time. Formally, the war between the factions comes to an end. In 2160, the Brotherhood of Steel discovers a pre-war destroyer on the coast that is still operational and heads into the Sonora Wasteland, establishing a satellite cell on the shores of Wagner's Bay. Before 2161, Dayglow is founded, a city built on the ruins of San Diego, named after the adjacent radioactive glow zone. Now the city is desolated due to disease, and the surviving refugees form a humanitarian and peaceful faction called the Followers of the Apocalypse and settle in the Boneyard Library, in the ruins of Inglewood. Besides the Followers, at the ruins of the Boneyard, a group of settlers called the Blades emerges, living in the downtown nightclub. While they're generally peaceful, they face persecution from the Regulators, a lawman faction who de facto control the Adytum and legitimize their power through protecting the settlement from aggressors, which they try to portray the Blades as. Not far from Junktown, the city of Scrap Heap is founded. A small settlement was under the control of a gang of crypts who owned the generator. Some criminal organizations are active in the region. The Thieves Guild in the Hub, engaged in petty thefts and robbery. The Skulls in Junktown, who carry out all the dirty work for Gizmo, the owner of a local casino. There are also mentions of small gangs like the Dead Dog Gang and the Fighting Flesh, who became victims of the Master and joined the ranks of supermutants. In addition to the Crimson Caravan in Hub, there are other important trading houses: the Water Merchants, led by Darren Hightower, and the Fargo Traders, led by Butch Harris. By 2161, together with the Crimson Caravan, they become the three main trading houses in Hub. However, the kingpin of the criminal organization, Decker, will have more influence in the city and will be controlling the city council. The Hands, being nomads, do not have their own permanent base. However, by 2161, they have established a temporary Han base not far from Shady Sands. The town of the Den was founded before 2161, which, in the absence of laws and centralized governance, became a center for slave trading, drug dens, a haven for outcasts, antisocial individuals, bandits, and all sorts of scoundrels. The Children of the Cathedral spread their heresy and start opening additional centers. Thus, the Hub Clinic and the Necropolis Clinic appear in Hub and Necropolis respectively. It is not clear why a clinic would be needed in a city of ghouls, though. Conventionally, it is believed that all events that are part of a major conflict between humans and supermutants and related to the protagonist of Fallout 1 occur from 2161 to 2162. Many thanks to Chris Avalon for composing Bible of Fallout, which introduced some specific dates of events, which allowed in creation of more accurate timeline. So, on December the 5th, 2161, Vault 13 opened its doors to send an expedition in search of a water chip, which is necessary to restore the water supply system. The protagonist, known as the Vault Dweller, receives motivational speeches about the importance of the mission from Overseer Jacqueline and sets off in search of the chip. 10 days later, while trying to reach Vault 15 where the chip might be, the Vault Dweller ends up in Shady Sands. He helps the town and its leader, Aradesh, in the conflict with the Huns. The Vault Dweller destroys the tribe and saves the hostage, Aradesh's daughter, Tandy. Unfortunately, the exploration of Vault 15 did not yield results as its chip was in an inoperable state. On December 30th, the Vault Dweller finds themselves in the town of Junktown, helping to get rid of the Skulls gang and Gizmo, who in turn try to hire the Vault Dweller to assassinate the current mayor, Killian Darkwater, to seize power in the town. Traveling south towards Hub, where they could at least buy water, on January the 4th, the Vault Dweller arrives in the settlement of Scrap Heap. But the town is in a state of showdown between two gangs, the Crypts and the Fools, who wanted to take control of the generator. As there is no more lore associated with the settlement, it can be assumed that both gangs perished. It doesn't matter who won, it was just a demo version of the game. On January 17th in Hub, the Vault Dweller receives a lead on Vault 12 in Bakersfield as a possible location for the working chip. The Vault Dweller negotiates temporary water supplies to Vault 13. However, the deal is marred by Decker's orchestrated assassination of the head of the water merchants, Darren Hightower. He also arranged the destruction of the Children of the Cathedral cell. The tired sheriff of Hub, fed up with Decker's impunity and lawlessness, and with the support of the Vault Dweller, launches a raid on the Maltese Falcon and eliminates the criminal authority. Decker's henchmen surrender immediately. In the basement they find a bound Brotherhood of Steel initiate and set him free. On February 13th, the search for the water chip leads the Vault Dweller to Necropolis. While trying to retrieve the chip in Vault 12, the Vault Dweller falls into a trap set by super mutants, who have settled in the camp near the water pump, but they manage to deal with them. The Vault Dweller delivers the chip to Vault 13, but is forced to venture into the Wasteland once again, this time to save the region from the threat of super mutants. On February 23rd, the Children of the Cathedral open another clinic, this time in Junktown. Before March the 3rd, the Vault Dweller stays in the Boneyard and helps the Blades by eliminating the regulators who manipulated the puppet mayor and public opinion. After resolving the crisis, Adytum is renamed into New Adytum. The Vault Dweller finds the Brotherhood of Steel, who were already aware of the existence of super mutants and had lost several scout squads in encounters with them. By saving a recruit from the hands of Hub's bandits and bringing supplies from West Tech, the Vault Dweller earns entry into the organization, granted as an exception to the rules of the Codex. The Brotherhood of Steel and the Unity's war begins. During the war on March 3, 2162, the Brotherhood infiltrates the Demonstration Vault, the Master's Lair. By activating the self-destruct protocol of the Vault, the Brotherhood destroys the Master along with Unity, as well as the Cathedral with the Children of the Cathedral. The remaining cultist clinics in Junktown and Necropolis are abandoned. A massive army of aimless and leaderless supermutants disperse into desperate groups. The Great Supermutant Migration begins, as they move eastwards, attacking several cities and settlements over the course of a year. The Brotherhood of Steel reaches out and defends some settlements. So, on March the 5th, the Supermutant attack the Boneyard, but thanks to the Brotherhood's defense, this siege is repelled. On March 24, the super mutants attack and destroy Necropolis. The Brotherhood did not defend the ghouls, so they stood no chance against the Green Giants in a battle. As a result of the city's destruction, the Great Ghoul Migration began, as ghouls started to seek refuge in other places. On April the 4th, the Hub fell victim to a super mutant attack. It's likely that the Brotherhood did not help, and the city was reduced to rubble. The Crimson Caravan evacuated to the town of Sedit in the New Mexico wasteland. The Water Merchants and the Thieves Guild are no longer mentioned in the lore, so it can be assumed that they did not survive the city's destruction, unlike the Fargo traders, who may have also evacuated. On April 20th, in order to halt the creation of supermutants, the Brotherhood of Steel raids the Mariposa base, where a group of supermutants led by Lieutenant remained after the Unity's demise. On May 10th, the Vault Dweller, missing a sleeve and with a bloodied bandage around their head and soot on their face, returns to their home, Vault 13, with a report on the neutralization of the mutant threat. However, at the Gyarados entrance, Overseer Jacqueline doesn't allow the hero to return home, stating that the hero's actions on the surface compromise the experiment of isolation, as the vault opened earlier than planned. The hero is forced to return to the Wasteland and seek a new home. Some members of Vault 13, deeming the Overseer's decision unfair, join the Dweller. Now let's talk about post-gameplay events. On May 23rd, super mutants attack Lost Hills bunker. Now the Brotherhood needs to defend their own home, but they withstand the siege. On July the 2nd, super mutants locate and besiege the settlement of Junktown. However, just like Boneyard, thanks to the efforts of the Brotherhood, the attack is repelled. On July 10th, the Dwellers group reached the northern border of the California Wasteland in southern Oregon. They laid the first bricks for the construction of their future settlement. On July 22nd, relentless super mutants launch an attack on Shady Sands, but the Brotherhood of Steel saves the settlement as well. The vacant Dayglow became a base for another group of super mutants. The Brotherhood of Steel had a tough time seizing their fortress. However, they managed to drive the super mutants out of the city. The eponymous expansion for Fallout Sonora presents Dayglow not as a single unified settlement, but as an agglomeration of several. Therefore, I would like to specify the location of the super mutant outpost and call it a shopping mall in Chula Vista. We won't delve deeply into analyzing the quality of the expansion's lore right now. I have something to say about it, but that's for another episode. The point is that in the expansion, Chula Vista is presented as a super mutant outpost, but the game's events take place significantly after the mentioned battle, not before it. Furthermore, the group of super mutants has no lore at all, so I believe this minor adjustment won't spoil the story. In place of super mutants in Dayglow, wandering groups of ghouls from Necropolis take over, establishing at least two enclaves, San Isidro on the Mexican border and Old Town, although a more original name could have been invented. San Isidro is under the leadership of Gustavo Obnal Vallejo, who dreams of creating a fully fledged large city exclusively for ghouls. In contrast, Old Town is under the leadership of John Butler, who believes that Dayglow should be a city open to economic ties, trade and in general inhabited by ghouls, super mutants and humans alike. Another group of ghouls formed the raider group known as Necronation. They established terror on the region, using their feral comrades as attack dogs and setting them loose during raids. After the Necronation attacks, only torn bodies remained, and those lucky enough to survive are usually taken by the ghouls to be irradiated heavily enough to instantly turn them into ferals, replenishing their army of the dead. After the Master's defeat, refugees arrive from the former Children of the Cathedral to the Den. They struggle with the loss of their cult, and some of them ultimately take their own lives. This concludes the first stage of the New California Wasteland's history, bounded by the Great War and the Brotherhood of Steel's war against the Master. If you are new to the Lost Holotapes, I hope you enjoyed the narrative and the format. Regardless, be awesome and don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment and check out the links in the description. First, the map that I used throughout the entire video, and second, the link to the text version of the episode. Perhaps some of you will find the text version easier to digest. Oh, and don't forget to check out my Fallout lore compendium. It's a massive table with all this summarized lore information. I mention it in the video instructions for the map. The link is also in the description. Try not to fall into the FIAV VATs, and then we can meet again in the Wastelands, Wanderers. End of the holotape.